Today I want to talk about a very common problem at the beginning of many winter seasons with winter bikes, which is cable lines freezing up and causing poor shifting. So quite often the way the winter starts, you have a lot of humidity, and then after the humidity freezes, and that freezing causes problems. It can cause problems with the brakes, but it quite often causes problems with shifting because the shift levers are so sensitive and they need to be very precise. So let's get into it. The way most bikes are set up is that you have the cable housing starting at the shifter, and it goes a little ways until it gets down to what's called a stop in the frame right here. And then after that the cable housing stops and it's just bare cable until the next stop, like this. And then you have the next length of cable housing until the next stop, and then finally the wire goes into the derailleur. This is not ideal for a winter bike because it adds areas where water can get into, or humidity can get into, the housing and freeze, which causes resistance. And you'll know that this is what's happening if you're able to shift down on the right hand side. So your right hand shifter, you're using the thumb shifter, which shifts the gears down. And that's pretty powerful. It's your thumb that's pulling against on the cable, and you can pull it through ice usually, so it'll feel stiff, but it will still work. But then when you use the finger shifter on the right hand side, which is to shift up again, the gears just don't move, and you can actually notice the cable has gone slack as well. And so that's because on the thumb side, it's your thumb that's pulling on the cable, which is quite powerful. When you're upshifting, it's the derailleur spring which is pulling on the cable, and that derailleur is a lot less strong than our muscles, and so there isn't enough force to actually pull through the ice, and so you'll be able to downshift but you won't be able to upshift, and not being able to shift when you're on your bike is extremely frustrating. The solution to this problem is continuous cable housing. This bike actually has that system set up already for the brake lines. So you'll see that this is where the housing starts, up at the brake lever, and it's one piece of housing. If we follow it along, see here, there's just this tie, it goes right over top, but there's no stop. And so the housing is still one continuous piece of housing all the way down to the brake itself. And it's only at the brake where you see bare cable again. And as you can see, the motion is really good. There's no resistance whatsoever. So that, continuous cable housing is a perfect system for winter bikes. And I don't understand why it isn't just the standard system for all winter bikes. I've gone to look at fat bikes, and even the fat bikes don't have that system for the derailleurs very often. I don't understand why that is. So that's all right, because you can bypass the system and set up continuous cable housing for yourself. All you do is start the cable housing, measure it the right length to go all the way down to your derailleur, and then instead of putting it in the stop like this one I haven't done yet, you're just going to run the cable beside the stop, as right here, and then attach it with a zip tie. And so it goes beside all the stops, and it's one piece of housing all the way down. There's another zip tie all the way down to the shifter. And that means that the only place where water can get in is at the bottom and at the top, and the amount of water and humidity that manages in those two places is so small that it's almost unnoticeable. So that will solve at least 90% of your friction problems. If you want to add just a little bit of extra performance and protect your cables so that you don't have to change them as often, another thing that you can do is to make sure that you lubricate them with a very light oil. And honestly, I've never found a chain oil or any other mineral oil that has been light enough. They just about always turn to grease. They add a lot of friction as soon as it gets to be about -20. And so what I use is automatic transmission fluid, $6.30 for 1 liter which, if you're using it on bicycles, is essentially a lifetime supply. This stuff is kind of my secret weapon for winter biking because even at extremely low temperatures, you know, minus 20, minus 25, it still has a fluid-like texture. I have some in a little bag here. So you can see it's almost like water. And it stays like that even when it's very, very cold, which makes it great for anywhere where you need to have very low resistance, and that's also enclosed. It's not a fluid that's meant to be exposed to the elements, so it needs to be only in an enclosed space. So I put it on the cables, on all the cable lines inside of the housing, and I also, when I remove the cover to replace the shifting wire, I also cover the internal shifter gears completely with this. And basically I just use a syringe to cover the whole area. It works really well. So before I sign off, I wanted to just give a quick tip for putting ATF fluid onto the cable lines. You can take a syringe, as I've done here, and inject it straight into the housing, and then you'll know when you have enough because it'll come out the bottom, hopefully into a paper towel. And then you just feed the cable line in and you're set to go. Or what you can do is use a little plastic bag or a glove and basically make a little pond, and then as you feed the cable into the housing, make sure that that pond is right at the joint, and then the cable will get lots of ATF fluid onto it that way. So this bike is now ready for any temperature of riding down to minus 30, which is the coldest that I've ever ridden. So that's it. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below, and I will get back to you before too long.